Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Ice Cream for Everyone podcast. This is Willem Vanderhorst, your host for the show. I'm excited to be back with a proper episode and a really exciting guest. I had a fantastic conversation with Julian Cole. If you work in advertising, and even more so if you work in strategy, there's a high chance you've heard of Julian or seen or come across some of his work. Julian was head of comms planning, communications planning for a big agency called BBDO in New York. Before that, he was the head of communications planning for BBH, another fantastic agency. I'm just saying, just in case you don't work in advertising. But we have a whole conversation about travel, about creativity, about how to sell creativity to marketing clients, why it's valuable. So, I mean, this is obviously particularly interesting, I think, for people who work in strategy and who work in advertising, communications, and media as a whole. But hopefully interesting for other people as well. I mean, I always love to hear cross references because I believe from what I know that the majority of people listening are either working in advertising and marketing or into gaming, because those tends to be the two areas that I pull together with my ideas of play, which I'll talk a little bit more in a second. But back to Julian. Before that, he was in Australia. He's worked in a number of creative communications and digital agencies in Australia, in Sydney and Melbourne. And throughout, he's done a lot of different things to share his process and a lot of different ideas about how to do planning and strategy and creative work within agencies. He's conducted the planning salon interviews that are still available on YouTube. They're a few years old, but still a lot of good stuff. And he writes on a regular basis every 2 weeks the Planning Dirty newsletter that we come to as well. So you can find all the links to Julian in the show notes. Back to actually the housekeeping now. Some housekeeping. Let's see. I've published some new stuff to the Ice Cream for Everyone website. So that's at www.icecreamforeveryone.net, everything spelled out. I'm working on trying to load it a little bit faster. I got a quite simple functional theme for this, hoping that it would be fast, and it's still a little bit slow. I've managed to accelerate it a little bit by removing Instagram and a few other things that were not needed. And I've introduced couple of weeks ago with my relaunching the Ice Cream Sunday email newsletter, this idea of playful strategy, which is going to be my thing that I'm developing. And looking at, I wrote a bit of a manifesto and I'm writing some more material I've been thinking for a while, how do I ally this idea that I find play and games fascinating, and how can they be better included in my work as a strategy consultant? So there's still some work coming out of that, but there's some work and this manifesto on the front page of the website and a little bit more on the Playful Strategy page. And I've also introduced this idea of creative expeditions that are either small group like ethnographic explorations into a type of industry or a type of people or type of consumer. I only have one example out, which is about fast food right now, but I'll be publishing more. And also they can be one-on-one sessions looking at how do I ally and mix my interest for play and travel and my experience in coaching before I was a strategist and my experience in brand strategy. So looking at spending a day with me, going out there for a walk or a hike, or many other different things. That's what I have right now. The first example is a day out in the mountains, and with the purpose of recentering whatever it is that you're up to and coming out of it with breakthrough ideas, essentially. So that might be clearing up somewhere that you're stuck as a business person. It could be for founders. It could be for people in marketing. It could be just entirely personal, just because you're interested in the service you'd like to find out more. But I'll talk about that some other time. And Playful Strategy, I talked about in my last podcast episode, of course, if you might have listened to that. I'm looking for new guests for the podcast. I have several recordings coming up, and several that are in the mix coming up. But if you'd like to be on the podcast, if you'd like to have a conversation with me, please do reach out. Totally available. I want to make sure there's more than the last few episodes, quite a few guys, to be honest, and white guys even more. So everybody's welcome to get in touch if you want to be in the podcast, but particularly women and people from diverse backgrounds from either around the world or diversity of colors. Or opinions would be great, even though, it's not necessarily the purpose of the website, but want to make of the podcast, but want to make sure that I have all these different perspectives and keep an eye on, diversity, basically. if you do enjoy, so you can send me an email at Willem, Willem, at icecreamforeveryone.net. I'll repeat that. That's Willem, Willem, at icecreamforeveryone.net. You can sign up to the newsletter on the website. That's the same address. If you like the show, it makes a hell of a difference, and it's super encouraging to me, and it helps, just like keeps me motivated for the show, to leave a review on your podcast app, on iTunes and Apple Podcasts, or just send me a tweet or an email. My Twitter handle is ICWillem, at letters I, letters C, WILLEM. And, or you can find me on Instagram with the same handle, and you can find the Ice Cream for Everyone page on Facebook, all of that. So yeah, it makes a hell of a difference. I know it takes a while, but yeah, it's just, if you appreciate the show, share it with other friends. I just want more people to listen to it, essentially. So without further ado, here's the conversation I had with Julian. Hey Julian, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to have you on the show. You're, as the world of strategy and planning goes, one of the celebrities, I would say.
Oh God, I hate to hear that. Definitely no celebrity, that's for sure.
And you've certainly conducted a lot of meetings and interviews and done a lot for sharing with the wider community, which is also another reason I'm excited to talk to you. And it seems like you've been up to a lot of, I know, traveling and exciting things lately that I'm looking forward to chat about, but just want to make sure for anybody, so if people listen to this who are not necessarily in strategy, so we'll probably go back to where you're from and a little bit of an intro, I guess, if that's cool.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously from my accent, I'm Australian. So I grew up in Australia. My parents were a producer and director of television commercials. They kind of worked together. So advertising was always at the dinner table and being discussed there. I did a degree at Monash University in marketing and psychology. And
where's Monash? Is that in Melbourne? No, I don't know where that is. It is Melbourne. Did you grow up in Melbourne?
Yeah, yep. So grew up in Melbourne, and then went to the university, which was literally down the road. I think in Australia, a lot of people go to universities that are in their town. So no one really moves out of home till really much later. So I did that, which was good. I did a thesis on, Facebook. It was actually on MySpace. So it was in 2007, started off on MySpace. I was like, the uses and gratifications of MySpace. But then by the end of the year, Facebook had become the number one platform. So I had to shift my thesis halfway through to, Facebook. So that was good.
Was it always obvious for you that you wanted to go in marketing and follow some of I don't know if it was the footsteps of your parents for you, or?
No, I think I wanted to first be a barrister. I wanted to do 3 jobs: be a barrister, an ambassador, and a DJ. This was when I was 13 years old.
Fantastic.
And so, none of them really eventuated, unfortunately. Maybe I'll still be an ambassador. I don't know.
What did you think about being an ambassador? That's a really interesting one for a 13-year-old. What was that representing for you?
What I love is negotiation, and I also love travel. So I think the two together, and I kind of like politics, but more like global politics, and I love geography. So I think maybe that was where that came from, but I've really never asked that question of myself.
Interesting. And as a kid, before you chose your way of university, because that's a theme that interests me as well. So I just wanted to plug that in as we were talking about before we get into the rest of your career. What was your favorite? Did you have a favorite kind of form of play, or how did you like to play the most as a kid?
I would say I liked games of I guess I liked strategy games from a very early age. I love Capture the Flag. I like chess. I like being active. I like being I like rough sports, kind of tackling a little bit more and kind of Australian rules football is much rougher than other sports. And so I did that, but then I was no good. So I started playing soccer, but I took that roughness to soccer and more aggressive kind of, behavior. My actual strength was a really weird position in AFL football. I was actually a tagger. And so the idea of tagging is that you pretty much are following their best player around the football field and making sure they don't touch the ball. And so it's kind of a very defensive position. And at a young age, it's kind of a little frowned upon because you've kind of isolated what their best player is and you're just going to destroy their game. And so people don't usually... when I was playing it, I was really good at it. I was really good at making sure he didn't get the ball, like whoever the different player was. But other teams didn't really like that because they thought, oh, we're just kids, don't play like that. But I was happy to do that.
Just for context, because I know the reputation of Australians rules football is that it's rougher, but it's still, you're still kicking the ball. You're not holding it like rugby or I can't remember.
You're kicking the ball. That's correct.
Yes.
So you're kicking it. But the thing that makes it, rougher is that you can get tackled by 360 degrees. So rather than the tackler being straight ahead of you, they can come from the sides, the back, the front. And so that makes it a much harder sport because you've got to kind of be looking around 360.
So apparently, cool. Rough sports and team sports at the same time.
Yeah, team sports and probably more like strategy. I like the team sports part of it as well.
Cool.
So they would be the three. I think they're the three that I'd be interested.
Do you still play chess these days, or?
No, not much at all.
I played as a kid as well. Like my grandfather is really, really into chess, but sometimes I think like, oh, maybe I should pick that up again. But I've never played very seriously at all. Like I know the rules and I've learned a couple of opening moves, and that's about it.
Yeah,
I probably don't remember it now.
Yeah, I think. I think you kind of bring a lot of those theories into work and stuff. The way you think about through problems and stuff are probably just naturally in there.
And the DJ side of things, were you into? So was music? I mean, I'm guessing music was an important part of your growing up as well.
No, not really. I don't know where that came from. It's quite weird. Like I liked dance music really early on. Like when I was probably like 13, there was this artist called Sash who I really liked. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to become a DJ. And then, I kind of didn't follow through, but my fiance is actually in music. She's in music marketing. So, hence also the reason why I'm now out in LA. But
I was wondering that. I was wondering because I when I got in touch, I assumed that you were in New York for some reason. Well, because you lived there before, I guess, but I didn't realize that you moved to LA.
Yeah, that's just a new move, but I'm loving it so far. Amazing weather and like it's just such a great place.
Good. The other reason I was wondering about the music, because I was looking through, just like some of the stuff you've done in the past, and I dug up this, I was just looking through the background of your videos, and there was a project you worked on a way back called Viral Rock Stars. I think it seemed like a fun project. I'm not sure exactly.
Viral Rock Stars.
Does that ring a bell?
No.
Back from 2008, and you were in some. So from what I could gather, the gist of it, you went to a shopping center with somebody else pretending for it to be a secret concert.
Oh yes, I did. I do remember that. I used to do like stunts and stuff.
Yeah,
and like it was kind of prank stuff. Wow, you were really digging into the deep cuts there. Even I forgot about that project. Wow, yeah, that was a bit. That was me just really doing pranks, which I liked at the time.
And I don't know if you remember now, but because I was wondering if you remember the gist of it, because I got a part of it from the video, but I was not entirely sure. It seems like the video is made to kind of make fun or prank around the idea that you can make anything viral. Or what does it mean to do that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that was the case. I think maybe it was about you've got to start with like a good product. Like obviously I'm not a rock star and I can't just make something go viral. I think that was the idea, but it's so long ago. That's like 10 years ago, 11 years ago. I'll need to watch it myself. So, yeah.
Well, you have a fantastic outfit, and you're dressed up as a pretend MTV show host, which is quite good.
Oh God, that's you've really done your research, and I'm a bit nervous now. What else you've dug up? What other cobwebs you got
a
out of
couple
the
of
top?
other things, but not really too bad. Don't worry.
Good.
But we can go back to like your tracking. So you finished your studies, moved over, and you were already looking at and studying social media at the time. What I guess what piqued your interest for going in that direction?
So I think I've always liked to kind of run my own race, and kind of I was looking at university. I'm like, I want to climb the ladder as fast as I can. I guess back then the corporate ladder. So I was working out at the time. I was like, what can I have an advantage in that potentially no one knows about, so that I can kind of become an expert in something fast. And so that's why I chose kind of Facebook. So I started writing about it. I was blogging back then in 2007 about like social media. So I was really trying to cut out a niche for myself where I could rise faster than if I had to go in the traditional ladder style.
Right. And when you're thinking about the ladder, were you already thinking about to go into creative agencies, or was that not necessarily on your radar already?
I think it was, because I had worked at a number of agencies. I think that I had done a lot of internships at different media agencies. So I'd been at a media agency, a creative agency, a media platform like one of the networks, all before that. So, and a creative agency. And I definitely thought that I was more creative than media side, but I loved the middle ground. Like my actual first blog was called Ad Space Pioneers, and the name behind that was I wanted to find new, innovative spaces where people could advertise.
And was that obvious for you to go in the direction of strategy then?
So how it actually happened was I was working at a digital agency called Sputnik, and in there they had this strategy consultancy called Naked Communications, which we just went on to like light the world on fire in terms of Australia, in terms of a new kind of agency model. They were kind of media and creative agnostic, and came before that and kind of really changed the landscape in Australia. That's when actual comms planners started appearing in media agencies, because it was a response to Naked Communications in the Australian market. So I saw what they were doing, and the idea that you could get paid for strategy and not just be an account person or you know, a creative, I thought, wow, that's amazing. I'd love to get paid for thinking. So I thought that was an amazing, if I could do that, wow, let me do that.
Cool. And just a quick pause for anybody who might not know, how did you define comms strategy or comms planning at that time? Or at the time or throughout, actually? I'm not sure if it's evolved for you or not.
So brand planning for me is coming up with like the key message, and comms planning is working out how does that message or that idea come to life through all different media, through all different channels. How's it all integrate together into one cohesive big campaign? And so I've got this new theory that maybe I can test out on you, that if you like it, you can let me know. So I think, you know, nightmares are when I really come to play. I love nightmare scenarios where, you know, on an account, the account's on fire, you know, you're way behind on deadlines, there's like high risk on the account, or there's like politically a lot of interagency fighting. That's like where I really love to be, because that's where I can really shine. And I think for me, comms planning is actually, if it's an extension of what I like, it's really, that's when it can really shine, is when you've got strategy that really has to move and adapt to the environment. And so a lot of strategists come up with ideas before the creative ideas, they come up with the brief, the creative brief. And a lot of them come up to the point of like making strategy without creative as as something to respond to. And so a lot of them will do the work, and then they'll see the creative ideas, and then either the creative will be bang on and they'll have a great presentation, or sometimes the creative comes off and it's one up the strategy. It's like even better than the initial kind of strategy positioning or the direction they thought it was going in. And a lot of strategists get really frustrated with that positioning, that because they feel like they haven't been listened to, all their work's gone down the drain. And for me, I actually love that scenario. I love getting hit in the face with a better piece of creative, because it requires me to be like thinking on my toes, like, okay, how are we going to make this work? How do we change this? And being strategy in like real time is so much more fun to me. And that's what comms planning is. It's like strategy in the heat of like, development, you know, it's being pressure tested. There's lots of risks. There's lots of, problems. So for me, comms planning is like, comms planning is really most effective when you're in like really shitty situations or nightmare situations.
Interesting. I agree with you, by the way. I really, really love it when the creative ideas come up with something that is perfect and amazing. I don't know if perfect's the right word, but, and way beyond anything that I could have thought of from the strategic side of thing, that it doesn't match the brief, but that it's obvious to everybody that it's better than what the brief was.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. So this idea of like you really operate better in if it's like in a nightmare situation and scenario. So what is it that you think you bring to the table that really makes a difference, or that you enjoy the most? I don't know if enjoy is the right word, but bring value to. Is it because you're this thinking on your feet that you're talking about, or some other quality that you bring?
Yeah, no, I think it's being able to think on your feet really fast. And I think you get good at that by like multiple repetitions, like constantly being in that kind of fire situation. And I've been in so many throughout my career of just like high intensity pressure. We've got to get this shit out tonight. How do we do this? And so I've learned a lot about how to do that. And so my, you know, those muscles are faster to kind of respond. I think the other thing is you've got to be able to work with people. You know, you've got to understand diplomacy, like understanding, politics. I actually love, politics. I think, you know, that there's two ways to look at, agency politics. You either say they don't exist, or I don't want to believe they exist, or you embrace it, because for me, politics are always going to be there because we work in an organization which is with people. We're in a people organization. We're not in academia where it's just us against a wall. And so if you don't know how to like communicate and get your idea through an organization and a network of people, then you're not going to get really far. You're not going to get very far in advertising. And I think the nightmare scenarios really pressure test how good you are at diplomacy and how good you are at navigating those tough situations.
Yeah, I agree. Interesting. Yeah, it's because it's interesting because I mean, agency politics for me exist, of course. I think particularly when I was in Asia and a little bit here as well in the States, experienced myself as a strategist, very much as a diplomat and a mediator, particularly with clients when you're having to on regional and or global businesses where there's different layers of clients who are either responsible for a country and then there's another one responsible for the whole region, Asia Pacific in that case, and conciliating, working out what everybody's needs are. Where I'm not always, but where I've had a little bit more of a harder time, I think, in my opinion, or maybe I'm weaker in that stage, is dealing with some agency politics, where I certainly am, if everybody's open and talking on the table and, you know, convincing my idea through, but if it seems like there's too many, where my feeling is we should be on the same team, we might disagree, but there's a commitment to want to work things out because we want to do the best work for the client, then I can totally work through it. But sometimes I have a feeling that it's not exactly that people are working a little bit more towards whatever personal agenda they have going on. And sometimes I have more or less of a harder time with it.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. I've definitely been in those situations of being completely frustrated because you can see a personal agenda coming through. But I guess my new lease on life, if I was to say that, is like, hey, that's real. That's a real market dynamic. Like if we because I love getting a little bit meta on actually doing comms planning on the creative development process. That's actually one thing I do with clients. I mean, agencies that I work with. And you think to yourself, okay, let's actually, like, that's a market dynamic. We know this other agency is out to get our work. Like, they want to get more scope. Now, how do we deal with that dynamic while still trying to get good work? How can we help them, or how do we reposition that or look at that in a different way? And one of the things that I do is, like, I try to get to what is the deep underlying need that they're trying to be met, and not to kind of try to stop getting triggered by the surface level kind of response. So I'll give you an example. So one of the biggest complaints that planners have is that the creative team just come back with TV ideas. Like, it's this idea doesn't even have TV in the budget, like in the campaign, yet for some reason they've come back with TV scripts. This team is so, they're so antiquated, and we're never going to get to good creative ideas. Now, my read on that is you got to actually just, like, scratch below the surface a little bit. It's not that they love TV ideas so much. It's just that their whole livelihood is based on awards. Now, a creative agency is only as good as the awards it wins, really, because there's been, scientific proof that if you get award-winning work, there's an 11 times multiplier on your return on investment. So there is a business case for it. So creatives, if you don't win an award for 2 years and you don't have any work that's, like, creatively award-winning, that is putting a massive risk on your career and your livelihood, for instance, for all intents and purposes. You're going to be stalling your career out if you can't win an award in 2 years or getting the momentum up. So it's kind of like, it's like food on the table or not if you're creative and you're not making award-winning ideas. Now, the thing about TV scripts is it's what I like to call pad thai creative. Whenever I go to a Thai restaurant, I always order the pad thai, because I have eaten so much pad thai, I can tell whether it's going to be a great one or an excellent, like, Thai restaurant. Now, I think TV scripts are the same for creatives. Now, creative directors are so nuanced in being able to identify a great idea versus an award-winning idea in TV scripts. That's why they always kind of fall into that area of doing TV scripts first.
Yeah.
And so you just have to understand that that's what it is. And the thing is that they're just evaluating the idea at that stage. If you come to them and give them something like an innovative idea, or, like, help show how that idea can come to life in a new channel that they hadn't thought of, and that would be an award-winning idea as well, like that would win awards, then there is no chance that they're not going to be receptive to that and really go in on that. It's just understanding that no creative is obsessed with TV. They're obsessed with winning awards. And so if you don't understand that, you just kind of get frustrated at the trigger rather than the underlying need.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah. And I agree with absolutely a lot of what you're saying. There's a few different things that it's making me think of that I'd love to dig into. Let's start with this one, because I was thinking before on, sorry, how do I formulate this? You're just pointing out to the, for example, how do we bring them or make them think about this new channel? For example, I don't know, emerging Snapchat, or doing something on Pinterest, or doing something with, I don't know what else, or doing something in VR, which I understand is part of the comms planning role and responsibilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think? Yeah. Yeah. And making sure, as in particularly in that idea of, like, making sure and looking at how does this overall idea and campaign come across all the media channels possible or available, or the ones that make the most sense, depending. And at the same time, just explaining this for anybody who doesn't know this, a lot of the agencies have been split between the media who buy those channels and the creative who technically come up with a creative idea that's going to be produced. I think because you used to work at Naked in Sydney, and I think that Naked was agnostic and did both. But then you worked in creative agencies that are not necessarily responsible for buying the media. So I guess I was asking, like, how do you compose with trying to recommend both to the creatives the right kind of media, and then over to either the media agency or the client, or I don't know if there's probably not a fixed order for everything, but how do you look at the idea of considering new channels that might not have been part of the available stuff that was already taken into consideration, or already purchased by the client, already planned, or like that?
Yep. So there's two ways that creative development happens. On one end of the spectrum, the media agencies already had the first bite at the cherry, and they've come and told you a list of different media assets, media placements and creative assets that you need to create. On the other end of the spectrum, you're being briefed at the same time, or the creative idea is coming first. And the creative agency is going wild, and they can think about any media that they like. Now, the problem is that it's not one of it. The problem is we do one or the other. The problem with the creative just running free is that you often have these ideas that are what I like to call cathedrals in the desert. They're these amazing ideas, but no one sees them. They're not tapped into the media realities. And the other way is, if you kind of have got a laundry list, you're just going to get something very boring that's kind of just ticking boxes, and you're not allowing the creative idea to flourish. So my in-between that I've been developing is what I call the three-legged brief. And the idea is that 80% of the media budget is usually assigned up front. So that's dead in the water. It's already done. So for instance, you might know we need to do a big TV push, and we know that we've got some direct response banners that we know we need to create. Now, what I suggest is that the third leg of that stool should be the last 20% of the media and creative budget combined, and the creative agency and media agency, if they want, should come up with an idea that helps articulate this big creative campaign idea in the best way. And that might be, hey, let's come up with let's go buy a RV and travel around America handing out this new, beer that we've got, or, let's buy, 1,000 bunny costumes for, I don't know, some pet store and give them out to 1,000, influencers or people we find, celebrities.
Is that a new idea, or is that something you've managed to do successfully in the past that you might have an example?
No, I've just started to do this.
Okay.
But what I actually had done in the past is whenever I worked with a media agency, I always told them, I'm your ambassador into the creative agency. Use me as the way to get through to the creative ideas. And what I always said was, creatives, don't try to fight 80% of this budget. Fight the last 20%. Don't try to rewrite the whole script, because it's all locked anyway. Like, a lot of these upfronts are done, and they're done in a year in advance. So you can't actually change that bit of the budget. Let's work on the stuff that you can change, the last 20%. And that's how I kind of tell the creatives to work. Just thinking about the last 20% rather than everything. I've actually I was talking to a friend, and we came up with this amazing analogy of what the job of the media planner is like. You've got to imagine a media planner's job is like being a travel agent in 1992, pre-internet. Imagine a client comes to you and they want a round the world trip, and imagine one of their friends comes to them, and you've just booked the whole flight. You've booked all the hotels, all the flights. And one of their friends says, instead of going to Bahamas for 2 weeks, you should change that and go to Paris for 2 weeks. Can you imagine how hard it is ringing up every airline, changing hotels, and the whole cluster of, brain dump that would be, if someone asked you to do that? So that's how you've got to empathize with the actual media planner. That's why they're pushing back on you when you say, can we have that billboard in Times Square?
Yes, I completely, it's just really, really great. That's very great. Another thing I was wondering about, and you pointed out to that, and I thought it was really great, about the research that's shown that award-winning work that presumably values creativity because they're creative awards has been shown to produce better results from a commercial perspective for the advertiser, right? For the brand's advertising.
Yes.
And at the same time, I was wondering, like, my interest in creativity predates the proof that, even though I believed it anyway before, the proof that there was such a thing. So I was wondering for you, how do you view creativity? Do you see it like that kind of means to an end because it is proven to create better commercial results? Or is there something else that you look for, or why you're interested in it, I guess? It's a broad question, but.
No, I think it delivers results, and it's also, yeah, I think that's the from an economic point of view, to me, it delivers results. And what we've got to realize is, I think the thing that we're playing with advertising, is risk. It's all about risk and job security. And so I think a lot of creative agencies need to know that they're in the business of, kind of mitigating risk and understanding their clients and their appetite for creativity, and really helping them show that creativity is not a risk, but is actually the safe bet to take. And that can take multiple forms. Like we were just talking about it before, like the 80-20.
Yes.
You're not risking the whole biscuit. You're just risking 20% of it.
Yes.
And so I think agencies need to think more when it comes to creativity. Like, that's a really nice statement, the 11 times multiplier. And I think a lot of agencies dined out on that, to try to like get more creative work. But I think we need to think in more ways around how do we get more ambitious creative work on the table. Cause that's a great statement, but it's not the silver bullet, because we're still, you can still tell a client that, and they will still go back to the work that's what's going to be safest for them and not risk their job if things go wrong.
Right. And also a lot of ideas. This goes back to another thing I was thinking of talking about, a post you wrote about a year ago about, I think the gist of it was New York City being the murder creativity capital of the world, which was scary because I've talked to other people thinking sometimes in other markets in the States who look up to New York as probably better in creativity than, for example, where I am in Chicago. And at the same time, it's interesting to see that it's kind of that those challenges exist. I think they exist everywhere. Having worked also in Europe and Asia, I see the same kind of challenges. And so I think there was a couple of other, I don't know if you want to talk about the posts and like what your sense of it was and where creativity was dying, because I completely understand mitigating the client, but then there was also some concerns on the agency side internally as well, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece for me was, when I moved from Australia to America, I often call the first 2 years of working there was the best creative work that I ever made that never saw the light of day. I was working with like the smartest people I've ever worked with. We were presenting the best work, and the clients didn't buy it. I was a digital strategy director, so I was leading a team who were making digital innovative ideas at a creative agency, BBH, who was traditionally known for TV or big brand work. And clients just didn't trust us. And so that's where I kind of started to call it the creative, like the murder capital of the world. And so I think this is, has always been my obsession, is with how, especially after this, is like, how do we sell more creative work? Because there's something wrong happening here, because I've never made so much work as I'd made in New York that never saw the light of day. And so for me, it started this kind of life obsession of like, okay, how do we understand that? So, thinking about what we were just talking about, like mitigating risk, how do you do that? Like, I came up with another way of mitigating risk, for clients around non-traditional ideas was, I called it the Rick James models for selling non-innovative work. And so what I said was, every time that we show up as an agency, we've got to do the Rick James model. And that is, the Rick model, which is you show the work first through what's the role of the work, then you show the idea, then the cost, and then the KPI. So RICK. And that actually had a better win ratio of like amount of work presented versus produced. We started upping that ratio based on just showing that, because what you're doing is you're taking a lot of those question marks out, for the clients, like, how much is this going to cost? This looks really expensive. I don't, if they've never seen an idea like that, they don't know how to price it.
Right.
They don't know what's it going to deliver. They don't know where the role is of the work is. And so I think when you're starting to take away a lot of that risk or uncertainty off the table is kind of key. The other one that I've started playing around with, so if I kind of had another run at it, because I kind of ran that 3 years ago and people still love it, is time. I think that a lot of marketers are just like bombarded and overwhelmed with the amount of work that they need to produce.
Right.
And a lot of them don't have time to do these projects. And the minute you start saying innovative idea that's never been done before, what that means is that's more time for the client team to be going to legal, to be vetting this whole idea out. And if they're already up to their eyeballs in work, there's no way they're going to sell that. So if we know that that's the case, how do we turn up in different ways? How do we turn up and make clients realize this won't be as big a time suck as that you think this will be? So that's my latest one, is really thinking about like time for the client and how can we make sure that doesn't sound overwhelming.
Yeah. That's great. And it's perfect because I had noted the Rick James model and I really liked that presentation as well. I thought it was both fun and interesting and a great idea, which is a good segue into thinking about, I really love, and I think I've been speaking for a lot of people who will listen to this and work in advertising, the fact that you come up with really interesting and fun, and I would say even playful, because you play around with a bunch of ideas and share them with people. And you've done that through a lot of different initiatives, maybe, even just as far as a few days ago, like collating a list of freelancers, the planning salon interviews on Hangouts that you did a few years ago, all the different models that you share, which is fantastic. So thank you for that, number one. And two is wondering, where is the drive coming from to keep doing that? Sometimes I feel like I should be doing more, and I don't know, I get busy with other things, or, whether it's day-to-day work or just, whatever, other things.
Yeah, I think it's been it's been from the start, like a strong way of my philosophy is like, share where you are today, because that's going to make you, better for like tomorrow. So one thing is that the more I feel like I share and put out there, it requires me to really think about my process and think deeply about like, what do I do? How do I do it? And so I've been kind of, always kind of a strong believer in kind of teaching as a better way to upskill yourself. So that has been key to me. I think I also feel like I hate the mystery around strategy. Like that's the one thing that kind of annoys me, is this kind of big mystery box of strategists, and look at them come in and show off their skills, and they're so smart and stuff. I don't think I'm that, I'm not that smart. I'm just, I'm more, that's why it's called Planning Dirty, my newsletter. It's like down in the weeds. It's grubby stuff, but I try to be helpful like that. And, it's probably me just trying to get that point of view across, is that don't worry if you're out there and you don't have like the big brain who thinks in big emotional language. There's another way to do it as well.
That's great. And obviously I'll put all the links to all the different pieces of work we're talking about and a few others in the show notes, and to your newsletter as well, Planning Dirty. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, I think, so when you left New York, you went traveling for a while, right?
Correct. I went for 14 months.
Wow. So yeah, how was that?
It was amazing.
What led to it in the first place, actually, if I may ask?
So my partner and I are both Australian, and Australians love to travel. It's just, I'm sure you've seen it being overseas. I don't know, it's just part of our DNA. It's somehow leaked into our DNA. So, we've loved being in America, and we kind of came to the realization that we're going to be in America for a lot longer. And I thought the original plan was I would love to have moved to Europe next, go to Amsterdam, London, or Berlin and work from there. But for my partner, she works in music, and it's just so big, the music industry out here, and I can really work from anywhere doing consulting to brands. So we moved to LA. we knew we were going to stay in America. So we decided to take a year off, to go travel to all the countries that would be hard to just do in 1 week, off. So, it was amazing. So we started in like the Middle East in Jordan, then went down to Africa, then back up to Eastern Europe through like, Turkey, Georgia, Lebanon, and then over to Central Asia from, Turkmenistan to Kyrgyzstan. And
really wanted to go there. Well, that was my original trip before I left London. I didn't do it in the end, but yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. I think Kyrgyzstan is like by far a standout country. Like you've got to go there, but,
what's a highlight from there for you?
Well, the mountains, the like hiking there is just phenomenal. Like I think 90% of the country is mountain ranges, and people still live nomadic lives in yurts. And you've got amazing hiking where you just like look at a mountain, you're like, oh, I'll just hike up that. And then you go up hiking it, and it's beautiful. Where other of the stans are good, but they're not as good. Kazakhstan, I feel like, is a miss. Uzbekistan, good if you like Silk Road, but I love history, but even I felt like it's very spread out and hard to do. And Turkmenistan's just weird. It's like the North Korea of the stans.
Yes,
like
that's right.
Got the dictator leader.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I can't remember his name, but yeah, there's a pretty strongman dictator.
Yeah,
been there for a while.
Yeah. So that was kind of weird and interesting. We'd been to North Korea like the year before, and so it was really interesting seeing it again. That kind of that whole.
Why did you want to go to North Korea?
I think I wanted to work it out. So Amber wanted to run a marathon, and I was like, had always been interested in North Korea.
Yeah. And
we found a marathon that you could do in North Korea. So we're like, oh my God, we've got to sign up to this. So I ended up running, they changed the time on me. So I'd been training for a marathon, and then they like shut the gate half an hour earlier. So I couldn't make it in that time. So I ended up running a half marathon, but it was the most bizarre experience because you have an opening ceremony and there's like 40,000 people in the stadium cheering you. And there's only like 800 of you, and they're all like clapping like mad, and they're all like segregated male and female, and no one's allowed to leave the stadium till you finish. And you go out on the roads by yourself because everything else is very like you're on a propaganda tour. You're on a bus, they'd take you there. But this was like you could actually go out by yourself and see the life. So that was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So interesting seeing the dictatorships of both countries and how that kind of comes to life.
Did you come back? What did you feel like you got out of the trip in terms of did it bring you anything for the work in terms of strategy or what you're doing now or what you want to do next?
I think what it did allow me to do, like, it's interesting because about a month ago, like I've been back about a month. And when I first came back, I was like, you know what? The trip did absolutely I don't think it impacted my work at all. What it did was I came back and I had lots of ideas really fast. And I think it's interesting because I've done kind of like 3 things at once, like come back from a massive trip overseas, moved to a new city and started consulting. And it's really hard to unpick what is what, because I'm really I'm stoked, like so happy right now with what I'm doing. And I can't work out which of the 3 it is. But I think if I was to isolate what the trip did is it gave me a little bit more perspective of, the, agencies, planning's roles in agencies and being able to see a little bit further away, like getting a bit, forest from the trees. And so I think that's improved my thinking a lot. Like I've been really analyzing the creative development process and really analyzing how can we sell more great creative work. And being out of it for a little while, I think helps clear your brain and see a lot of kind of connections that you're probably missing when you're in it day to day.
Yeah. Fantastic. Wow, this is exciting times then, right?
Yeah, loving it. So it's so fun. It's like finding the product fit, what do people want in the market, what do I want to offer, and kind of working it out together. So it's been really cool. I think my goal is I want to be consulting brand side in the long term. Like right now I've got a lot of demand from agencies, which is awesome, and a lot that I can give. But I'm more interested in helping brands, especially working through like big interagency kind of messes and helping figure out campaigns for them and go to market strategies is where I really want to be. And so that's been really cool because it's like working out the language. Like the language is a little different between being in an agency versus being client side. So I'm really trying to work out and work out that language and how I can, because I know I believe I've got the skills that can be very valuable. It's just how I'm packaging it up with the language is just the kind of challenge at the moment.
Do you have an example to illustrate of like one piece of language or words that you're looking at right now?
Yeah. So the word comms planning in itself is very loaded in a lot of different places. Like comms planning can mean in a media agent, can be kind of very media centric or very like creative. So sometimes people think of comms planners and they think, hey, they're the creative who can help blow out my idea through lots of channels and they'll help understand the creative idea and can understand the nuances and build it out. The other side, the media side, is like, oh no, they're the person who's like the account person who tells me exactly what my media has to be doing and very stringent on that. And so they're very different views. And then comms planning for clients, a lot of clients just some either don't have it or some do. So some are just like, I don't know what that is. We don't have anything like that in our organization. And so you got to think, okay, what are different ways to think about it? So the other one I've been thinking about is like, it's really the same principles as design thinking. So is that something that I should be calling it comms planning? So I'm learning more about comms planning and design thinking and seeing the massive overlap there. So that's interesting.
Fantastic. Cool. All right. Well, we'll start wrapping up, and I usually finish with the cool down questions, and I've just like typed up some new ones, so a little bit, so you're going to be the guinea pig for the new cool down questions.
Love it.
But we'll start with a traditional one because it's kind of easy. It's just almost a test measure. But do you have a favorite ice cream flavor?
I really like salted ones. Like I like dark chocolate and salt. So anything that's got that kind of big sweet and bitter taste at the same time, I love.
Good. Are you a dark chocolate person in general as well, or?
Yeah, but not too dark. Like I go 85%. I don't go beyond that.
I'm the same. Green and Black's organic 85% is my go-to.
Yeah.
Cool. What's the last piece of art that really had an impact on you?
We've got some Ethiopian church art that we got, which is awesome. Like you'll have to, if you can link to this in your show notes, you should do it. Yeah. But it's definitely my type of art that I really love. So it's got this Mambo, like there's another artist called Reg Mombasa who does this kind of childish bravery kind of art, that I really love. It's really bold, colorful. It's childish and it's confident in its childishness. And I think that really, resonates with me and who I am because I think I am. I'm like a bright person who's very positive and happy to be kind of a bit scrappy. So that's probably the last one that really resonates with me.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely, like you said, put the link up so I could put it in the show notes. That'd be great. What's something you think everyone should experience at least once? I'll ask the second one in case that was too complicated.
No, it's not too complicated. I love the question. I just want to give you a really good answer.
Uh-huh.
Just give me a second.
Yeah, sure. I was going to say the next one is similar, and I'm wondering if they're worth asking both of them together or not, or only one. So I can ask.
I've already got my answer, but I'm trying to top it. Okay. There's this. I think there's something better, but there's this toboggan on the Great Wall of China, and it's really fun when you're going down. But it's like, now that I've like ruined the surprise, it's not as fun because I looked at it on pictures online and I'm like, oh yeah, that looks all right. But it actually goes really fast and it's really fun. But I feel like
so a big slide off the wall. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's like a big slide. It's a big slide to get down. It's really fun. It's really good.
That sounds awesome. My brother, who's a chef and works in Sri Lanka, just sent me a thing this morning about a fancy resort in the Maldives who have a whole big. They've just built some really brand new, extremely high end on the water villas, and all the villas have their own winding slide that goes from the top floor to the seaboard.
Ah, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. I was like, I think there's at least one person who's going to buy that ridiculously expensive villa for a night just for the slide.
Yep, for sure.
And the last question I was thinking, and I don't know, I think it's not a bad question, but I was wondering if it's a bit too similar to the other one, which was, if you could give one thing to everyone, like if you made a wish and everybody has that thing, what would it be?
Confidence.
Cool.
I feel like there's a lot of, especially in planning, there's a lot of like imposter syndrome and not people not confident in their own abilities, but they are really awesome. So they should be speaking more.
Thank you. Do you think that the kind of imposter syndrome seems to, because I've heard that, I mean, I think it's common to a lot of people everywhere. It's quite human, but it seems to be coming across quite a bit in creative areas. So either artists or people in creative industries. I was wondering if that's something you find as well.
Yeah, I don't struggle with it too bad, but I think I know why, because we create something that doesn't have an output or is a subjective output. And so I think it's the solution is never clear. It's never right or wrong. And so I think imposter syndrome occurs when there's no clear outcome to your work. And I think when you think about planning and creative, that's exactly what it is.
Interesting. Cool. All right. Well, this was a fantastic conversation. I really, really enjoyed it, Julian. Thank you so much for making time for it. So just any last words and making sure, where can people find you? Where's the best place to keep in touch or subscribe to your newsletter?
I think the newsletter, Planning Dirty, read that if you want tools and tips from people kind of in the weeds. Then LinkedIn, I publish a lot on LinkedIn, so they're medium. And then I'm going to have an online course coming sometime this year, so you can watch out for that.
Nice. Perfect. Fantastic. All right. And I'll put obviously all the links in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, already another episode gone, and that was a fun conversation. I really enjoyed talking to Julian. He's a very cool guy. I'm excited for what's coming up next, and very, very useful if you work in advertising and marketing. He just has tons of things out there. If you want to learn more about social media and digital strategy and what Julian does, he also has several courses on Skillshare. So I thought I'd add that, but I'll put that in the show notes. Everything about him is in the show notes. And, what else? As I said at the beginning, I'm just going to repeat myself, but now that you've listened to the show and you're still listening to this particular point, please do leave a review on Apple Podcasts, on iTunes, so you might have to open iTunes on your laptop, or you can maybe leave a star rating, 5-star please, and a review just to tell me what you like about the show, and or if you don't like, just send me an email directly, or send me a tweet and share this with your friends, by all means, please. Makes a difference, just has more people discover the show, and if you leave your views, it's easier for people to discover the show through whatever algorithmic ranking Apple Podcasts operates by. But certainly sharing it with a friend directly helps as well. So I think that's about it, really. Check out the rest of my stuff on the website. That's www.icecreamforeveryone.net, and my email, Willem, WILLEM, @icecreamforeveryone.net, and on Twitter you can find me @IcyWillem. Letters I, letters C, WILLEM. I think that's about it for now. Thank you very much for listening. It's great to be back on the podcast, and I'll be back again very soon with another exciting guest. Have a fantastic afternoon, evening, morning, whatever time of day or night it is for you. All right, bye.